This program was funded in part by 1 out of 3 fatal crashes involves an impaired driver. Driving drunk, buzzed, or high is never acceptable, and law enforcement officers are working around the clock to stop it with sobriety checkpoints and saturation patrols. As a driver, make the correct choice and pick the beverage on the right, or have a pre-selected designated driver, and you won't have this happen to you. Be smart, drive sober, or get pulled over.
Cornhusker Motor Club Foundation, a nonprofit organization supporting traffic safety programs, state park improvement projects, K-12 education, and crime prevention and law enforcement initiatives across Nebraska. The Cornhusker Motor Club Foundation supports efforts to make our roadways safer by focusing on the dangers associated with distracted driving. For more information, cornhuskerfoundation.org.
All day, every day, America is a mobile nation.
Almost every day we have contact with people driving under the influence, whether it's illicit or prescription drugs. It is a huge problem. In the morning, on your way to work, 1 in every 60 drivers around you is impaired.
We had our little main strip, was called Wesley Street. Everybody just ride up and down Wesley Street. Man, if you could drink a little beer or maybe smoke a little weed or whatever, oh man, you were doing big things at that time.
On your way home from work, up until 9 o'clock at night, that number increases to 1 in every 10 drivers around you is impaired. For the weekend, during the evening, it's 1 in every 4 drivers around you is impaired.
Is there a prevalence of marijuana in the state of Colorado? Absolutely there is. We're seeing an increase in cannabis in the blood of fatally injured drivers.
I had taken a whole bunch of Xanax that night. For some reason I realized that I was on the wrong side of the road, and I looked up and there was cars coming at me, and I veered off over the median and popped all 4 of my tires and went into a ditch.
I remember times when my main focus was trying to stay off the median. And then when I would get to my parking space, I would just bounce into it, you know. I had no business being on the road.
So I think when people think about medications and driving, that they're often thinking about kind of illegal drugs, but that's not true for the majority of people. And these are medications that are highly used in the population.
Increasingly, healthcare, safety, and law enforcement experts are pointing to a new, dangerous national trend. Driving under the influence of illicit drugs, over-the-counter pills, or even prescription medications. On any given day, the people driving next to you may present a challenge for your safety.
Drunk driving is no longer the leading cause of impaired car crashes.
In the past 4 years, the number of drug driving crashes in Ohio shot up by 25%.
More and more people are getting high, getting behind the wheel, and not thinking twice about it.
I'm 24 years old. I don't think I ever had a problem driving while I was smoking weed. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been battling with different addictions. Specifically, I hit rock bottom with opiates, which are painkillers. I was raised in a middle-class family. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse. My dad's always been an alcoholic. I didn't look at him as an alcoholic until I became an addict. Going into middle school, I experimented smoking weed, but it never went really overboard. Near the end of my junior year of high school, one friend in particular that I looked up to got me to try ecstasy for the first time, and that's kind of how my harder drug use started. I tried opiates for the first time, and the drugs made me feel amazing, and I didn't look at all the negative consequences of it, because I felt like I was in control. And I definitely had a lot of issues driving. In the last 5 years, I've totaled 4 cars. The night that I got my aggravated DUI, I was drunk and high on cocaine. I woke up from being passed out, and I was told that I almost ran my brother over because he was trying to stop me from driving away. I ended up veering off the road and hitting a barrier on the side of a highway. When I kind of came to, I was in the backseat of the cop car, and I have no memory of driving at all. I was blacked out. When I was doing drugs, I didn't really care about anybody but myself. I didn't really think about the risk I was to other people. In my situation, I couldn't live the way I was anymore. You get to a point in addiction where you don't really have a choice. It's either treatment or death, or treatment or incarceration. And for me, it was kind of a life or death thing. Until I went to residential treatment, my periods of sobriety were really, really short. I live in a sober living house with 7 other recovering addicts, and it gives me the support I need to continue in recovery. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety or being clean. The opposite of actual addiction is fellowship and connection. And it's to give you accountability for your actions.
You can see the challenges that we're facing in law enforcement. Are
Drugged driving is becoming a national priority for educators and law enforcement, creating learning opportunities like the Nebraska Highway Safety Conference.
We are seeing our officers now better trained for drug impairment, making more arrests and keeping our communities safer.
Colorado is at the forefront of the drugged driving dilemma. It was the first state to legalize recreational and medical marijuana.
The question is, are we seeing more and more drivers impaired by cannabis, specifically in this state? Right now, we're still in this new era of legalized recreational marijuana. There's hundreds of dispensaries throughout the state where a person 21 or older can go purchase a certain amount of marijuana, and they can use it in private. Colorado adults are using marijuana at higher rates than other states. That's a fact. And we're seeing increases in drug driving arrests related to cannabis. Drug driving has always been a problem, but fortunately, in law enforcement, we're getting better and better at how we identify drug impaired drivers. The goal in the police department here, so we are putting on a series of trainings for police officers to become more situationally aware on how to identify the drug impaired drivers.
You're going to have the sways and then the hop to prevent from falling.
The training that we're going through on our department, it's titled Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement, what people would commonly know as roadside maneuvers.
You see the tip of my finger? I'd like you to follow that with your eyes only, don't move your head.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004.
This is the next level to help police officers understand how to better identify the drug impaired driver and know what signs and symptoms to look for.
Come on in.
Another type of training brings law enforcement officers and members of the public together.
Hey everybody, I want to welcome you guys back to another Green Lab session.
In 2015, I created a class called Marijuana DUI Investigations. The most unique feature of the class is what is called a Green Lab, and that is where we take members of the community, not the law enforcement students, but we have them dose on marijuana.
I haven't driven in a long time, but I used to drive all the time stoned, and never had a wreck.
It makes me more
alert,
aware. I'm like,
I focus better with school.
less distracted.
I have to go out and function. I have to drive my car. I'm going to school. I'm going to work. The focus, the pain relief, that all lasts, a decent amount of time. But like the head trip part of it, I can insta sober. I'll be sober by the time I walk in there.
Obviously, you've already agreed to do some roadside tests for us, so we'll start off with that.
We allow the law enforcement students to have access to that person so they can do roadsides, they can interview them, they can ask questions of them. And the whole purpose of the class is to get law enforcement officers more comfortable with trying to detect the marijuana impaired driver.
On a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being completely sober, 10 being unconscious, how would you rate yourself on that scale for how impaired you feel right now?
2.5. Yeah.
Really? Based on those, I would take you into custody if you were driving.
Yeah.
You're swaying during that. I picked up lack of convergence, which is when I come in like this, especially coming out, your eyes are herky-jerky. They weren't really tracking evenly.
Every smoker is different. I could get in the car and drive right now.
You guys done with questions?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. You're awesome. What's your name again?
Erica.
Erica. Thanks a lot, Erica.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The reality is marijuana is the #1 drug after alcohol that we find in drivers on American roads. Now we have a new substance introduced to public consumption that has its own impairing qualities, and it's different from alcohol.
However, there are no national standards for marijuana impairment. So the burden of proof rests with drug recognition. As a result, all 108 Loveland police officers are receiving roadside enforcement training.
Adam 158, copy traffic.
From midnight 1939.
When the laws changed and marijuana became legalized in the state of Colorado, we started to see it more prevalent within our community as far as the traffic stops. One of my greatest passions is getting drug-impaired drivers off the roadway, just because I truly believe that whenever someone is impacted by someone who's driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, they're innocent victims.
We're seeing an increase in cannabis in the blood of fatally injured drivers. And we have more than 10,000 people in our country killed every year on our nation's highways by impaired drivers. That is a serious community health issue and problem in our country. So as a chief, that's what I look at, protecting our community. And every time we arrest an impaired driver or deter somebody from driving a vehicle while impaired, I believe we're saving lives.
Good evening, sir. I'm Officer Gonzalez. Do you know the reason why I pulled you over?
Not every drug driver recognizes the impairment.
Well, I was about 16. I got my first car. Couldn't tell me nothing because I knew everything. That's when I really became a genius. I had all the answers, so I made some choices that were not good. Smoking a little marijuana, I started doing pills, just thought that everything was okay because I was getting away with it. I had a lot of success athletically in high school. I participated in football and track. I didn't really work hard at it, but I could just do it. And at the end of 10 games, I actually led the state of Texas in rushing. And I got football scholarships all over the country.
Soon, he signed with Coach Tom Osborne at the University of Nebraska. And Simmons became a star receiver on the highest scoring team in college football, the 1983 Scoring Explosion.
Then I got drafted into a professional football league called the USFL. And that's kind of where I ran into a big speed bump. I got introduced to cocaine in my rookie year in the pros. And I wound up with a $1,000 a day habit. I'd get up, drive myself to wherever I had to go, and I couldn't see anything wrong with what I was doing. I was really self-sabotaging and didn't know it. You don't get caught, it doesn't present itself as a problem.
But Simmons did get caught, repeatedly, and possession of cocaine sent him to prison 4 times.
Well, in prison for the 4th time, I had lost pretty much everything. My parents were both in heaven. Didn't really have a purpose for living anymore, but didn't have the courage to take my own life. So when I realized that I'm just existing, then one day I received a letter from a man that I hadn't heard from in 20 years. What's going on, Coach?
Hi, Ricky.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
I didn't even know he knew where I was. And the letter was very brief. It was a letter that said, Dear Ricky, I know your parents believed in you. I believe in you. And upon your release, if there's anything I can do to help you, feel free to contact me. And it was signed Tom Osborne. But that letter, it actually changed my life. I mean, because I think the timing was very, very, very important because I was at a bad place. I was at a dark place.
As you and I both know, the drug culture can suck you in pretty fast.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm glad I was able to be a small part of something good.
And, you know, I appreciate that more than you'll ever know. And actually, to be honest with you, I memorized that letter so that I can use it in my speeches, too, to encourage others. And I went to this party, being the genius I am, and they were doing stuff at this party that I wasn't familiar with, and I tried this drug called cocaine, and I got hooked. I think in another month, I'll have 8 years clean and sober. So I try to get people to understand, especially our youth, that what they're doing isn't brand new. They think riding around, having a couple of drinks, smoking a little bit, taking a pill or two, they think that's new. Man, people was doing that before they were thought about, but they don't know that because they're only listening to people their age.
But if you ask Omaha drug recognition expert Angie Baker, a less-known rising impairment exists for all drivers. And it's from an unexpected source, medications prescribed by physicians.
There are people that are taking medications on a daily basis. There are some that just need that medication to keep them stabilized and things like that, but they aren't aware that it causes them problems or significant problems when they're driving. It is an increasing problem. During the day, the numbers are high. However, at night, these numbers go up.
Recently, a drug driving incident made national news when professional golfer Tiger Woods was found asleep in his car on the side of the road.
Do you know where you're at right now?
I do not know.
You have no idea? Okay. Have you taken any medication today?
Yeah.
What'd you take? Xanax? Yeah. Okay, are you prescribed that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you're not even looking at the light.
Oh, no light.
You're not even moving. Missed heel to toe, stepped off line. Stepped off to the right to balance. Not counting his steps. All right, Mr. Woods, I'm placing you under arrest for suspicion of driving under the influence, okay? Do you understand?
Blow out. Good, there you go. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. On both of your tests, you blew exactly the same thing. 3 zeros, triple zeros, which means the instrument did not detect any alcohol on your breath.
He definitely brought it to everyone's attention. And now everybody knows it's a problem. It's the prescriptions. It's like, oh, wow, there are more of you people doing that. Yes, every day. More and more every day. Prime example, see the car in front of us? You see her riding the line? She's in the other lane. Those are indications of impairment. It's difficult to tell someone they're not fine. It's hardest if they've become involved in an accident and either harmed someone, themselves, or, you know, nearly get involved in an accident, and you tell them, but you're not fine. And it's hard. I mean, there are really good people out there that are, you know, their medication is for a reason. But my job dictates that I protect everyone else out there. You know, I have to protect you from yourself sometimes.
My name is Megan, and I'm 49 years old. I've been in recovery for over 2 years now. Yeah, much of the issue I had was with prescriptions. Looking back now, I had chronic headaches, and it was just really, really severe. And by the time I became a teenager, my mom was having me seek help from a doctor, and they decided to prescribe benzodiazepines, which are tranquilizers. And it was very helpful for the condition that I had. They encouraged me to take them if I'd had a hard day. So that was just really simple. You just take a pill. You have a hard day, you take a pill. And 2 was better than 1, and 3 was better than 2, and it just snowballed. I knew that I had a problem, and I knew I had to stop. It never crossed my mind that I shouldn't have been driving, but I did. It just didn't even cross my mind. It scares me to death to think about how I have at times in my life driven totally under the influence of whatever I was under the influence of at that moment. There was one time that I drove my car into the ditch instead of the driveway. I remember times when my main focus was trying to stay off the median. And then when I would get to my parking space, I would just bounce into it, you know. I had no business being on the road. Another problem that I had was that I'm a healthcare professional. I work with people who have addictions, and in the particular field that I'm working in, it was impossible for me to get any kind of treatment without one of my own clients finding out about it. Because of my need to protect my identity, I chose to do SMART recovery, self-management and recovery training, and it's really about learning how to manage yourself and how to deal with urges and cravings. I think that most people just blindly take whatever they're given, no matter what it is, whether it could be addictive or not. I think that a lot of people, including healthcare professionals, are not educated on what medications can be abused. I mean, how many of us have gotten some bottle of pills that said, you know, that it could cause drowsiness, and it says to be careful driving? How many people stay home when they get a pill like that? I don't think anybody does. Our society doesn't allow us to just not drive. We have to drive.
That need can create challenges for people who take daily medications. And it's become a focus for researchers at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Here at the Mind and Brain Health Lab, researchers are examining connections between personal medical needs, reasoning, and reactions.
Right. So she's paying pretty good attention.
We don't have an easy way of doing that in the clinic and telling how is it that the drugs that we give or the diseases that people have play out in the real world. And that's what we do here.
Hi, Mrs. Smith. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Driving is a great laboratory for how the brain works.
What's going to happen is you're going to drive through all kinds of roadways.
Because when you think about it, you have to make a lot of decisions and do things under pressure of time. And it's all happening pretty quickly.
You just have to use the car just the way you would, and I'm going to get out of your way here.
All right.
When a driver's in the simulator, we expose them to challenges. People who are impaired because they have disease or they're taking a drug may not actually make appropriate corrections. And then they're more prone to risk of injury, hurting themselves or other people, or even death.
Oh, that's an interesting thing.
Most of the studies relate to a full range of medical conditions.
It turns out that there is a really important disease of sugar control called diabetes.
Over 10% of the population has diabetes. I mean, millions and billions of people, you know, and those numbers are projected to increase to about 2 billion worldwide.
So we give people insulin in an attempt to keep their blood sugar under control. And when it gets too low, your brain doesn't have the fuel it needs to think. You may get drowsy, you may become inattentive, you may not make good decisions. Just like low blood sugar has an effect on the brain, it's possible that chemotherapy agents, which a lot of people take who have breast cancer or colon cancer, may also affect thinking.
A lot of patients complain after they've had chemotherapy that they have attention or memory deficits, and we kind of call that chemo brain. And you know, these attention and memory abilities are critical for your ability to drive. So that's what we're trying to understand.
And to better evaluate behavior, patients are taking realistic driving tests in a specially equipped car, or having their own vehicle outfitted with cameras and sensors.
One big question is, are people actually getting into the car when they're in an unsafe state? We can't evaluate that in the lab because we can't monitor people over long periods of time to see what they're doing.
Next set of lights up ahead, we'll be turning right onto Saddle Creek.
Black boxes are sensor instrumentation that we put into people's own cars. So we actually remotely monitor their driving behavior over extended time frames, like a month to 3 months. With the black boxes, we can see that real-world behavior, and so we can establish real-world risk.
And looking ahead, the ultimate answer may lie in smart car technology.
Designing smart systems in a car is one way to cope with people who have trouble like low blood glucose and diabetes. So when you think about it right now, we actually do have some kind of automated systems to help us out. But it may come a time where the car can actually recognize that you're impaired and take over.
So that's a project that we're actually working on right now with Toyota. And this is an area that is of major interest to car companies. We're teaching the car, you need to drive for the person when they're in this state. And that's really important when you're thinking about these medical populations where they have to drive every single day. You can't just take them off the road. You can't just say, you're impaired right now, don't get into the car. So we just have to develop smarter vehicles, and that's what we're doing.
In the meantime, resolving the drug driving dilemma remains with the drivers themselves.
I do think that sometimes hitting a low point will help us to take stock, that sometimes a low point can really wake you up, be an opportunity to change.
In my situation, I couldn't live the way I was anymore. I realized that I just physically could not go on, and I needed to find a new way to live.
It's all avoidable. People need to make that decision not to drive before they put a substance in their body that's going to impair them. Because once the impairment happens, the judgment goes out the door and people make bad mistakes. Good people make bad mistakes.
This program was funded in part by the Nebraska Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office, the Cornhusker Motor Club Foundation, the Nebraska Trucking Association, and AAA, the Auto Club Group.